There's a kind of neighborhood that no longer exists in America, and most people can't quite name what's missing when they try to describe it. They'll say it felt safer. They'll say people knew each other. They'll say you could walk outside and something was always happening. What they are describing, without realizing it, is the porch culture of 1950s America. A set of habits and unspoken customs so ordinary to the people living them that nobody thought to document them until they were almost entirely gone. The front porch was not just architecture. It was a social technology, and the rituals that happened on and around it were what kept neighborhoods functioning as communities rather than just collections of houses. The first thing to understand is the physical reality. Post-war suburban housing, built in massive quantity through the late 1940s and 1950s, almost universally included a front porch, or at minimum, a covered front stoop. The builders understood, or inherited the understanding, that a house without a transitional space between public and private was a house that turned its back on the street. The porch was a threshold, and thresholds matter. The evening sit was the most common tradition and the most powerful. After dinner, families came outside, not always for long, sometimes just 30 or 40 minutes before dark. But the consistency was the point. Neighbors knew when to expect each other. They knew who sat where, whose chair creaked, whose children were allowed to run in the yard, and whose were called in early. That rhythm of predictable presence created a passive surveillance network that required no technology and no organization. People simply knew their street. This had measurable effects. Studies of neighborhood crime patterns in the post-war period consistently show that blocks with high levels of what sociologists now call informal social control, meaning neighbors who know each other and monitor shared space, reported significantly lower rates of property crime than comparable blocks without those social bonds. The porch tradition was informal social control. It just didn't have that name yet. The second vanished tradition is the glass of lemonade or iced tea offered to anyone who stopped to talk. This seems trivial. It wasn't. The offer of a drink was a signal, it said. I'm not in a hurry, you're welcome here. This conversation has no time limit. In an era before air conditioning was universal, stepping onto a neighbor's porch for a cold drink was also practical. But the social meaning ran deeper than the temperature. Hospitality was performed publicly where the whole street could see it, and that public performance set a standard. Third, the shared maintenance of appearance. On a well-functioning 1950s block, neighbors noticed and commented gently, mostly, when a lawn went uncut or a porch needed paint. This was not nosiness for its own sake. It was a collective understanding that the appearance of the street belonged to everyone on it, that one property's decline affected every property's value and the neighborhood's reputation. The accountability was personal and local, not institutional. Fourth, the monitoring of children. Children played outside, and the porch made it possible for adults to watch without hovering. A mother sitting on her porch could see 3 or 4 houses in either direction. She knew which children were out, roughly where they were, and whether the general energy of the street felt normal. If something was off, she knew it. This informal childcare network was invisible and free, and it gave children a radius of freedom that today requires organized supervision to approximate. Fifth, the weather conversation. This sounds like nothing. It was something. Talking about weather genuinely, specifically, with attention to local conditions, was how neighbors calibrated shared experience. They talked about the same rain, the same heat, the same early frost. It established common ground. It was a rehearsal for trust. Sixth, the recognition of routine. On a porch culture blog, you knew your neighbor's schedule. You knew when he left for work, when she came back from errands, when the lights went off at night. That knowledge was not intrusive, it was protective. When something broke from the pattern, someone noticed. Illness was caught this way. Falls, absences. People who needed help were found. 7th through 15th could each carry a full conversation. The practice of sitting with the bereaved on their porch in the days after a death. The tradition of the first porch light of evening as a signal that all was well. The borrowing culture that flowed through front yards rather than back doors. The informal news network that passed information about job openings and available rentals before any of it appeared in print. The seasonal decoration customs that marked the calendar for an entire block. The habit of older men gathering after supper to talk about nothing that mattered and everything that did. The children's chalk games that spread from one porch apron to the next. The music that drifted from open windows and became the street's unofficial soundtrack. And the specific art of the wave. A full-arm wave to someone you knew. A chin lift to someone you recognized. A nod to a stranger passing through. These are not small things dressed up as large ones. Each of them was a thread. Together, they were a fabric. The fabric held neighborhoods together in ways that urban planners and social scientists spent decades trying to replicate artificially after it was gone. The garage moved cars off the street. Air conditioning moved families indoors. The television gave evenings a competing focal point. It happened gradually, and then completely. The porches are still on many of the houses. Most of them are empty now. What do you remember from your own front porch or someone else's? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.